So this is going to be my GoPro Fusion tutorial on how to do a hyperlapse using the GoPro Fusion 360 camera. So I like to start by creating folders for all of my footage, and instead of plugging the camera directly into the computer, I will export the files into a folder called like Fusion not rendered. Inside here you'll see the DCM folder that you get off of the camera, and then you'll see the back and front cameras. Just so you guys know, the wave audio file is recorded with the back camera. You'll notice the front camera only has 3 files and the back camera has 4. Alright, so obviously we have to get started in the Fusion Studio. So instead of browsing the camera, I just add media and find the folder. Desktop, my tutorial, not rendered, and then you just highlight the DCM folder and click open. So it renders the file together. Sometimes this can take a while if you have several clips. Now depending on how I'm going to use the footage will depend on how I export at this point, but I'm using a overcapture type to do a hyperlapse, so I'm going to export in 4K and not 5K. So first thing I do is kind of adjust my horizon here, so I'm going to tweak this a little bit. Then I go to my sharpness, bump it up to 150, always leave the GoPro color, and then you're pretty much done. If you go back, I always use full stabilization versus anti-shake, and then add to the render queue. This is where you set up the type of file. And like I said, because I'm going to be doing overcapture, I'll choose a 4K file, and that's because the free software that I use does not support the 5.2K. So create render. It also doesn't support the cineform, so you have to be careful. So 4K at H.264, stereo audio, and then render selected. You can also choose where your file is going to go. So if you go to preferences and change your export location, in this case I want it to go to the Fusion rendered folder. Open, and then back, and now render selected. So again, you guys know, if you've had the Fusion for more than 5 minutes, how long this process can take, depending on your computer and the length of the file. Usually it's about 10 minutes for every 1 minute of footage, which is crazy, but and I have a pretty fast MacBook Pro. Alright, that took like way longer than I anticipated, but the file is completely rendered. So now at this point we are done with GoPro Fusion Studio, and this next step I really wish GoPro would implement into their Fusion Studio with the overcapture feature. I wish you could do a little bit more with keyframes and stuff, and you'll understand what I'm talking about in a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and close Fusion Studio, and the next software that I'm going to open is called Insta360 Studio, and this is free software to anybody, but it's designed for the Insta360 camera, which I do not own. I just downloaded the software. I like how easy it is to add keyframes and stuff. I can do some of that work in Final Cut Pro. They do support 360 video files, but the keyframing is super hard and it's not very intuitive, so I find it much easier and quicker to edit in this Insta360 Studio. So I'm going to open that. Like I said, very basic software, so to add a file you just click the little plus sign. Obviously a desktop Fusion tutorial, and then inside here is the folder that I just rendered from the GoPro Fusion software. I created this video file, which you can see is MP4, and it's in 4K resolution. And I open that. Alright, so sorry about the noise there. Turn the volume down. So at this point I'm just in player mode, so I can go ahead and scrub through the file anywhere, and you can see this is just me walking. What's really nice is I can kind of click and drag around the screen, and you guys can see that it is a 360 video file, and this is kind of where I start to make a hyperlapse or a time-lapse video. I do try to pre-plan my shots, so you'll notice I'm walking with the camera, and there's this long boardwalk here that I knew would be a nice straight shot, and I kind of knew that the lighthouse would be off to the side the whole time. So I thought this would be a good case for a hyperlapse. So when you want to start adding keyframes, you can click this little free capture option. That's what Insta360 calls, instead of overcapture, they call it free capture. And then you click the add keyframe button down here. And this is cool because you can do a tiny planet, different keyframes. I kind of like to start in tiny planet mode, and it's very intuitive. You can just click and drag around the screen. I know my subject is going to be this lighthouse, so I think I want to start at this angle. And the trick to hyperlapses is keeping that subject in frame, center of the frame, throughout the entire video. So I added that. Now I'm basically just going to play. I can cheat a little bit here, though. If I'm doing a hyperlapse, I don't really want to add a whole lot of keyframes, because every time I add a keyframe, it does a weird little camera movement, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. So I added another keyframe, and I'm going to choose this guy, which is a perspective. It just gives me like a 1080 degree, and I'm going to try and keep the top of this lighthouse in the center of my frame here. So kind of scroll up a little bit, and that's basically my keyframe. For I scrub back to the beginning and click play, it's going to start in this tiny planet mode and basically zoom right into the perspective mode, and with the lighthouse center of my shot. So basically now I'm going to scrub way far into my footage, actually all the way to the end, and I'm going to add a keyframe perspective, and I just want to put the lighthouse center. So what it should do as I move around back to the beginning, it's not going to look very interesting at slow speed. It doesn't look super cool until you actually open this file in Final Cut and speed it up super fast, and then it kind of gives it like a real cool perspective, because I'm walking here and you'll see the lighthouse sort of stays in the center of the frame, as I walk down the boardwalk. And you can see how super stable the the shot is. And like I said, by only adding one keyframe, it doesn't make it super interesting, but you'll see when I speed it up, there won't be a whole lot of like panning and tilting and zooming. It just kind of keeps that lighthouse sort of in the same part of the screen, even as I'm walking past it. We'll go over some of the export settings. I always do 16:9 resolution. I change the bitrate to superb, and this is where you change your file directory on where you actually want to put it. So I'm calling these files Fusion overcapture, so that's the folder I want to put it in. I always try to name my files. So this is Bodie Island Lighthouse. I'll call it overcap. And then this is a feature where they let you add a watermark basically to the bottom of your footage, and I always uncheck that because it looks super cheesy and I don't want it in the middle of my footage. So now I'm just going to click export, and you'll see this is much faster than Fusion Studio. I mean, it's almost a 2-minute clip, and you guys can see in the bottom right here how fast it's actually export. Alright guys, so the file is all exported. As you can see down here it says done. I did do some other files earlier so that when I get them into Final Cut I'll be able to work with kind of more than one file. So I am now done with Insta360 Studio, so I'm going to go ahead and clean that up and close it out. I'm going to open Final Cut Pro 10, and I've already created a project and named it a Hyper Demo, and now at this point I just need to import some files. And we are going to Fusion Tutorial, my overcapture, and then you can see the Bodie Island Lighthouse. I always leave the files in their current place. I don't want it to copy, and then I do import selected. It's also important to note that my project file is now 1080p. It is not 4K. When I exported the video from Insta360 Studio, it is a 1080p file, so high definition only. And now you can see kind of my overcapture, and you can see how clear it is. For whatever reason, Insta360, I guess to work faster, it displays the videos. Oops, sorry about the volume again. It displays the videos in like a super low resolution. I'm not sure why. but you can see now here in Final Cut that it definitely gives it a better resolution. So again, now when I play it, I kind of started in this tiny planet view, and then I zoom into the lighthouse with the center of my frame here, and then again I'm just walking down the boardwalk. So what I want to do is speed this up in my timeline. So again, you can right click or just highlight the clip in this little speed ramp. So I want to speed it up. Let's try 8 times. Just you can see how much smaller that makes the file, and just give it a minute to render out here, and then we'll play it, and it should be like kind of a cool little hyperlapse effect. So we'll play, and here you go. I could probably afford to go a little bit faster, just to give it that cool hyperlapse effect, but you can see how it kept the lighthouse directly in the center of the shot. So what I'm going to do is, let's try it 20 times. It's crazy, you're taking a 2-minute clip and you're making it like 5 seconds long. Alright, so we will let that render out. I'm also going to import some other media that I've been messing with, just to give you guys some ideas of how neat you can make some of these clips. Yes, let's do this one and this one, import, and then drag this guy into my timeline. And you can see it's a different lighthouse, but it's very similar. So if I chop off the beginning, see, we'll just speed it up 20 times, let that render out. And then here we go. So there's 20 times speed. You can kind of see it gives it that cool hyperlapse effect. And then there's another one that I rendered of the Hatteras Lighthouse. So I hope you guys kind of enjoyed this quick little tutorial on hyperlapses using the GoPro Fusion. Now at this point, obviously I would add like some transitions or something, just to make this transition between clips a little smoother. And you can kind of get pretty creative with it. As you can see, like this clip here, I think it's really neat, just me walking from the building to the lighthouse, but I did like this cool little inverted planet. And again, if I speed this up here, alright, so again, I think if you added a transition here, Command T, and just to give it like a little smooth buffer from one clip to the other. And I actually don't really like the end of that clip, so it's just sort of a neat little. And I think I did one more overcapture. Yeah, there we go, import. And this one's kind of a cool shot because I start looking down at my feet and then I just sort of zoom up, zoom up to the top of the lighthouse. So I think when I speed this up, it's going to look pretty cool. Alright guys, any questions, leave them in the comments below, and appreciate a little thumbs up, subscription if you don't mind, and thanks for watching.
Lightning strikes by my window, hits my chest right in the morning.